We created technology as our bondsman, our tool to reshape the world. But following Hegel's dialectic, a strange reversal has occurred. The supposed Lord, humanity, has become dependent on its creation for validation, for connection, for meaning. Koyaanisqatsi, a film by Gottfried Reggio, showed us decades ago that we don't just use technology, we live it, breathe it, become it. Life out of balance, as expressed by the Hopi people native to America. We are playing God, but somewhere along the way, we became the played. As Gottfried Reggio mentioned, life unquestioned is life lived in a religious state. This video will help you question it. Chapter 1: The Death of Aura. In 1935, in the work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, Walter Benjamin wrote about aura, that ineffable quality of an original artwork, an emphasis felt in the here and now through the existence of desire, distance, and time. But what happened to desire, distance, and time in our current era? We now have immediate accessibility and readiness. Reproduction occurs without its traditional cost. Velocity has increased and desire has been transformed, constantly measured by modern algorithms. Walter Benjamin predicted this. Technical reproduction and over-supplementation would destroy the aura. A photograph has no aura, a recording has no aura, a video has no aura. And what about the JPEG sold as an NFT for millions? Blockchain and cryptocurrencies demonstrate how belief is constructed through decentralization and coins backed with a value, transparency, and algorithms, perverting the meaning of belief altogether. Therefore, initiating a cultural shift, if we look carefully at the NFT hype, NFTs, for those who don't know what this technology is, it's simply a consensual signpost on a decentralized network, which data is considered original on this very network. This decentralized network is the blockchain which runs on financial assets, aka coins like Bitcoin or Ethereum, that were mined on the decentralized network with energy and thus creating an energy value. Basically how our daily money, aka fiat money, how the blockchain is called, work with the gold backing before Richard Nixon, the American president, lost the backing afterwards.
To defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
The digital world knows no originals, only copies pretending to be scarce. It's simply the consensus that something is authentic that makes an NFT valuable. What is aura then? You could say the emergence from a pursuit of truthfulness through deep reflection. In other words, paresia, as post-structuralist philosopher Michel Foucault describes. More precisely, paresia is a verbal activity in which a speaker expresses personal relationship to truth and risks his life because he recognizes truth-telling as a duty to improve or help other people, as well as himself. In paresia, the speaker uses his freedom and chooses frankness instead of persuasion, truth instead of falsehood or silence, the risk of death instead of life and security, criticism instead of flattery, and moral duty instead of self-interest and moral apathy. This aura, representing both the divine and secular, now seems overtaken by algorithms, optimization, and market-driven capital. God is dead, proclaimed Friedrich Nietzsche. As a result, belief itself has become deconstructed by conditionality rather than existing in a form that can be generally challenged or questioned. So you have a modern-day example of technology versus authentic art, with attempts to reproduce hype series like Bored Ape Yacht Club or CryptoPunks, where imitators believe it's about everything but the technology and capital behind it. The art itself at its core, but turning out it's primarily about investment, control, ergo more capital. Fiat money losing its trust and therefore the belief in the state, money itself and a rebellion against the state. 21 million Bitcoin as a fixed supply to tackle inflation and money printing, therefore a narrative who comes first wins, and a fatalistic narrative. Also totally ignoring the fact that the choosing procedure of an asset is also consensual in the first place and therefore a product of belief as well. Our culture has seemingly become increasingly transparent and conditional, placing us in a new position where it's more difficult to confront the core aspects of belief. As Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer write in the Dialectics of Enlightenment, written in 1944, what is concealed is that the ground on which technology gains power over society is the power of the economically strongest over society. Technical rationality today is the rationality of domination itself. It is the compulsive character of a self-alienating society. The step from telephone to radio has clearly distinguished the worlds. Liberally, the telephone still allowed the participants to play the role of a subject. Democratically, radio makes everyone equal listeners in order to surrender them to the authority of the uniform programs of the stations. So who is the curator standing between you and others? Nothing? Data? The algorithm? The deep state? Does the curator have a morality? This new order totalizes manufacturability and thereby abolishes the solidity of the factual, indeed the solidity of being, getting us to Chapter 2, Algorithmic Feudalism. Yanis Varoufakis provides a clear answer, calling our current system techno-feudalism. The new lords don't own land, they own your attention, your clicks, your data. As Yanis Varoufakis writes in Techno-Feudalism, what begins with us, training with Alexa, soon spins beyond our control.
Essentially, what this Alexa device is doing is it uses you to train it to know you so that it can surprise you with useful to you suggestions and moves so that you get used to getting good advice from Alexa, so that next time Alexa, on behalf of the owner of the algorithm that lives in this cloud of combination of hardware and software, next time it, on behalf of its owner, tells you, you should buy this or you should do that, you are much more agreeable to these suggestions. So you've got this new form of capital. I call it cloud capital, because it is a combination of algorithms and hardware, and it is completely and totally dialectical in the sense that you are working or doing things to train it so that it trains you to train it, to train you, to train it, to train you, to train it ad infinitum. That's the dialectical part. So as in the end, to maximize the power of its owner, Jeff Bezos in the case of Amazon, to sell you what the owner thinks is best for him that you should buy.
For those convinced that free will exists, this might sound like paranoia, but how many of our choices are actually truly made consciously, and how many are predetermined by algorithms? If you haven't watched videos regarding debates on the existence of free will, I would highly suggest either videos from Sabine Hossenfelder and her take on superdeterminism, or Robert Sapolsky's take on free will. This conundrum of free will is also brilliantly thematized in the Matrix movies. In the architect's room, Neo is presented with a supposedly free choice. His decision to save Trinity, driven by pure belief and love, becomes his path to liberation, not through utilitarian calculation, but through an act of faith. As the Oracle said,
"Because you didn't come here to make the choice. You've already made it. You're here to try to understand why you made it."
The pure act of belief stands in a diametrical opposition to algorithmic determination. Interestingly, philosophers from different political backgrounds recognize this fundamental tension. Jordan Peterson, We Who Wrestle with God, Slavoj Žižek, Christian Atheism, both pointing out the paradoxical dichotomies of belief and control, highlighting dangers of a fluid transition between either human or mechanical agency and control. This narrated erosion of belief has profoundly influenced also investors' trust in state institutions and cultural infrastructure, which brings us to the third chapter, Chapter 3, Poisoned Money, the Death of Capitalism. Varoufakis further described in his book the biggest reason for the death of capitalism. When interest rates dropped fast, capitalists panicked. Instead of rejoicing, they thought if central banks allowed to drop interest rates, things must be looking very grim, seeing this as a reason why investors didn't invest. Conglomerates founded on traditional terrestrial capital like GM or Volkswagen refused to invest the interest-free central bank money because when they surveyed the ongoing carnage of the pandemic, they saw the same thing their bankers had seen. Masses of little people condemned to low wages, bullshit jobs and diminished prospects. A sea of people unable to afford new, high-value products. So why invest in such stuff? Instead, they would do something riskless, profitable and stress-free. They used it to buy back their own company shares, boosting their company's share price and, along with it, their bonuses. Poison money flowed in torrents, not into serious investments, good quality jobs, or anything capable of reanimating capitalism's lost animal spirits. Instead, shareholders and executives bought land, empty warehouses, art, whole villages in Italy, and even islands in Greece. They collected football clubs, super yachts, and at some point began to buy digital assets like Bitcoin or NFTs that they neither understood or nor knew what to do with it. Claude Capital was the one pulsating, stirring force to benefit from the poisoning of money. But the cultural landscape is in a land on its own and therefore not influenced by markets, right? Isolated to devote all its resources to creativity. Chapter 4, The Perfectionism Trap. The cultural landscape has been subtly transformed by technological trends and capital requirements and had to adjust to trends and capital also in order to reach the public and signify their existence. Streaming during COVID-19, independent or more democratic orchestras relying more on marketing and social media instead of state funds, trying to adjust to shorter attention span while budget cuts in Berlin are happening in the cultural landscape. Hamburg's mayor celebrating a $300 million investment in an opera house. The question also here remains, can we trust advocating for cultural mixture while supporting elite investments? On the aesthetical side, competition have never been more fierce and unrelentless through the intense focus on transparency of perfectionism due to the incapability and lack of resources to address pluralistic ways of playing music in a creative manner and also due to higher velocity. Information therefore seemingly becoming oversaturated. Rhythmical and intonational precision in a mechanical sense, that is, as a safe consensus and belief brought forward by technological inventions. Technological inventions that create a digital magnifying glass that reveals the unconscious behind conscious action. Dissociation of realities, a symptom of information oversaturation, addressed German-Korean philosopher Byung-Chul Han very clearly in his book Infocracy. Chapter 5, Infocracy and the Commodity of Truth.
사람이 흔히 생각하는 것처럼 자유에 대한 자유를 억압하는 게 아니라 자유에 대한 공격을 하는 그런 통제 사회가 아니라 오히려 사람을 스스로 자발적으로 판옵티콘적 시선에 자기를 내맡기게 하는 자발적으로. 그러니까 사람들은 자기를 노출하고 스스로 전시함으로써 열렬히 디지털 판옵티쿰 건설에 동참하는 거예요. 그러니까 내가 어떤 빅브러더가 이제 통제 사회가 이제 그 판옵티콘을 건설해 갖고 이제 다른 그 사람들을 거기에 속박시키는 게 아니라 우리가 스스로 그 판옵티콘의 건설에 동참하는 거예요. 좀 동참을 하기 때문에 더 이 판옵티콘이 효율적인 것이죠. 그러니까 디지털 그래서 이제 투명사의 마지막 말이 디지털 판옵티콘의 수감자는 우리가 수감자인데 우리가 피해자지만은 동시에 우리가 가해자입니다. 왜냐하면 우리 스스로가 판옵티콘이 건설에 동참을 했기 때문에 우리가 피해자만이 아니라 가해자예요. 그러니까 여기에 자유의 변증법이 있다는 말을 했는데 처음에 자유지만은 그 반대로 돌아간다. 그래서 변증법이라는 자유라고 생각했지만은 그게 통제로 변형된다. 그게 변증법입니다. 자유의 변증법이 여기도. 그래서 마지막 그 문장이 뭐냐면 투명사의 마지막 문장이 뭐냐면 자유는 곧 통제가 된다. Freiheit erweist sich als Kontrolle, 독일말로.
Byung-Chul Han's discussions on transparency and the digital panopticon illustrate how modern surveillance and visibility created an environment where mystery and faith struggle to survive. Han Byung-Chul diagnoses our condition as infocracy ruled by information. Information is additive and cumulative, while truth is narrative and exclusive. The crisis of truth is always a crisis of society. Without truth, society decays internally. It is then held together only by external, instrumental, economic relationships. Mutual evaluations now practiced everywhere destroy human relationships by subjecting them to a total commercialization. All human values are now economized and commercialized. Society and culture become commodity-shaped. The commodity replaces the truth. Byung-Chul Han also specifically addresses conspiracy theories because they resist facts because they function as narratives. That also leads to when truth becomes undone, society falls apart internally. Which brings us to the last chapter and the symptom that resolves from it, the burnout society. Byung-Chul Han also addresses in his book The Burnout Society the constant production, endless productivity, relentless self-optimization, all leading to exhaustion, masked as achievement. From Nietzsche's Übermensch to modern biohackers like Brian Johnson spending millions to reduce biological age, optimization has become our religion. We pathologize tiredness and reframe limitations as personal failures.
Wir sind zu lebendig, zu sterben und zu tot. Zu leben. Ja.
Er sieht unsere Gesellschaft in einem Erschöpfungszustand, verursacht durch den Neoliberalismus, das kapitalistische Wirtschaftssystem, das eigentlich mehr Freiheit verspricht.
Dieser Zusammenfall von Ausbeutung und Freiheit erzeugt eine ungeheure Effizienz. Also man wähnt sich in Freiheit. Im Grunde beutet man sie freiwillig und leidenschaftlich aus. Und man geht daran zugrunde.
Früher waren die Verhältnisse klarer, als strikt zwischen Arbeit und Nichtarbeit getrennt wurde. Als die Ausbeutung brutal, aber sichtbar war. So Han.
Bei der Fremdausbeutung habe ich das Gefühl der Freiheit nicht. Dafür musste ich mich nicht selbst ausbeuten. Ich musste eine Menge Arbeit liefern, dann habe ich meine verdiente Pause. Heute haben wir keine Pause, weil wir 24 Stunden nonstop uns optimieren muss.
Doch das Selbstoptimieren erschöpft und macht unendlich müde. Außerdem verlieren wir die Beziehung zu den physischen Dingen, so wie in Korea, wo man am U-Bahnhof mit Smartphone einkauft.
Man hat die Bahnsteige verglast, damit die Leute sich nicht vor den Zug werfen. Das heißt, die Botschaft ist nicht runterspringen vor den Zug, sondern konsumieren.
Meanwhile, attention has become the primary capital resource. Algorithms compete for every second of focus with increasingly extreme content. Our attention is bound more to external factors instead of a true intrinsic motivation to pay attention, to do something that goes beyond pleasure and entertainment. We try to subvert our exhaustion, hiding from our own tiredness. Because if we begin to create again, we face the challenges from a seemingly worse position than before. Koyanis Katsi showed us in 1982, we don't just use technology, we live it. Technology isn't separate from culture, it has become our culture. If the challenge isn't about rejecting technology, what is it about? Developing the ability to question it? Understanding recursive structures of algorithmic prisons? Or cultivating autonomous curiosity? Embracing complexity? If we reach constantly for the stars and finally leave, what do we actually leave behind? Maybe, as Nietzsche said, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. I'm Nathan Pike, I'm a professional musician. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
The transiting from old nature or the natural environment as our host of life for human habitation into a technological milieu, into mass technology as the environment of life. So these films have never been about the effect of technology, of industry. Life unquestioned is life lived in a religious state.